Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast, a show started by two physical therapy school classmates who sat in very different sections of the lecture hall. We cover topics that help you start, build, and grow your physical therapy practice with your hosts, Dr. Owen Campbell and Dr. Brian Wolf. All right, and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Owen Campbell. I'm the owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona, and with me is Dr. Brian Wolf, owner of Evolution Physical Therapy over in Connecticut and Long Island. How are we doing today, Brian?
Good, man. How are you? How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I have to apologize to the listeners about my audio. My mic decided to die on me right before we started recording, so turn your volume up when I start talking, I guess.
There you go. I'll just sound nice and loud.
The smooth, sultry tones of Brian Wolf.
Exactly. And then it makes it easier for me to talk over you.
Well, we should start. We have a video going. I'll make like a hand signal when I want you to shut up. It'll be great.
Exactly. It'll be perfect.
There you go. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about something that really affects every industry, but I almost feel like it's really a big part of physical therapy, right? And physical therapy, and I don't know, maybe this you could speak to this, but I feel like a lot of us go to medical school, healthcare school, if you're associated with a medical school versus not, but you kind of make that decision of I kind of don't want to do a million hours learning about the greatest heart surgery ever. I can still do something that really helps people, but have a work-life balance. I'll be a physical therapist. And I think that continues into our profession a lot, where a lot of people, when they start out and they just do not have that, I'm going to grind a million hours a day to get where I want to be. Whereas I feel like that's a physician thing, maybe. But anyway, I really want to talk today about work-life balance as it relates to physical therapy and how just seeking that work-life balance can either help or hurt your practice, help or hurt your business, and just kind of go on that because I've been hearing about it a lot. I just started my own practice, so I don't want to completely screw over my family life, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I'm having a good time and I feel like I'm working more hours, but I feel way more happy. So, I just wanted to chat with that a little bit about today. I know, Brian, you've been in the business ownership aspect for a lot longer than me, so you probably dealt with this a lot more, and you got two kids.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think like this is a big hot button for me on the work-life balance side because I think in healthcare in particular, you talk about physical therapy, but I think in healthcare in particular that there's a lot of burnout, right? Is the word here.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of it is people's lack there of passion for what they're doing.
yeah,
And I think that priorities change over a lifetime, and that's okay. Like you can
mm,
embrace that, right? So we were talking a little bit about this off the podcast, but in terms of I see it all the time actually in professional sports,
yeah,
is people who get involved in professional sports and they're like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. Like I can't wait. But it's a grind, man. Like professional sports is a grind. There's a like you 21 working 21 straight days, 50 straight days is a norm. Working at like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. is like a norm.
mm,
Flying away from your friends and family, like that's a norm. So, for a lot of people, the priorities of like, this will be really cool. I can't wait to work in sports. I can't wait to work with professional athletes. I can't wait to do this or, whatever. Like, when I first started in, New York City Football Club, like it was go to training camp for 3 weeks,
mm,
gone for my family. And by the
yeah,
way, like that, like and it was, hey,
yeah,
a week later, like I was going, like it wasn't, there was no like build up. So sometimes in that initial contract, it can be really fast. So I think in general, the difference is if there's something that you're passionate about.
hmm,
Again, that's from somebody who's like just trying to find a job they're passionate about.
yeah,
As far as like a business owner, it's also creating something that you're passionate about because I've also seen plenty of business owners that get burnt out. We've talked to those
hmm,
guys too. So to me, it's really finding something that you love because then work doesn't feel like work, right? What's the famous quote is
yeah,
if you're working, you're working, but if you're not actually doing something you work and doing something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? Something along
yeah.
those lines.
And
So
that's what I was referring to, I think, right where you say where that passion and you get into counting up hours worked, right? And I was, to give the listeners a little bit of input, I was a W-2 employee, right? And I was having a good time. I love my patients, but there was some things with the business that I wasn't a huge fan of. And I would be able, they were pretty cool about if I didn't have a patient till 8, I could show up at 8. I could leave early if there was no patient. So I wasn't really working that many hours. I got my notes done during the week, but my God, it felt awful because I would be spending an hour watching YouTube or, playing video games or something just to get my mind off the fact that I had to go to that job, right? And it just catastrophized in my mind, like, man, this is just, and so if you were to hand me a questionnaire at the end of that to say, what's your work-life balance? I would say it's terrible, right? And then you would look at the number of hours I worked. I was way less than what I'm working now. Now, that morning time, I am so pumped about SEO and figuring out how do I write a blog that gets me enough backlinks to click on this, and that hour before my kids wake up is now productive time. So that would be quote unquote worked hours, right? I'm driving back and forth to clients. I have a long day today. I'm doing things on the weekend. I'm calling people. I'm doing all these things. So if you total up the absolute number of hours worked now, I'm working way more, right?
Yeah.
But if you gave me that same questionnaire, man, it doesn't feel like it. Because and we can go into all the reasons like that, but that is just when you talk about work-life balance, you got to make sure you're not thinking numbers.
Yeah.
Passion has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I know, and I don't want to like speak for you, but you and I are very similar in this way, and my
Mhm.
wife is very similar to this, and she's a physical therapist too, and same thing with my partner Mike, as you know. I feel
Yeah.
like the people who love to like start and run a business are really big lifelong learners. They're like
Mhm.
excited to learn,
Yeah.
right? So I think if you're somebody who's like excited to learn, like that's something that business ownership works because, quite frankly, it's the ultimate back against the wall learning. In
Yeah.
theory, if like you're not learning and innovating, then in theory someone's trying to steal your money to a degree, right?
Yeah.
So like I think that's the excitement because I try to figure that out, right? I was like, why like do I not burn out working 60, 80 hour weeks, right?
Mhm.
Like doing this stuff. And the answer really comes back to passion. But then I'm like, but then why am I passionate about this in particular? Like what makes it fun? And I
Yeah.
think it's like the figuring out the problem. And now I'll be the first to tell you, and I'm sure you would agree with me, is like there's also problems that suck, like that I don't want to figure
Oh,
out,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. But I think that there's problems that I've kind of solved. Like you talk about SEO, there's a great example. Like, site engine up like there, what is it? Site engine
Search
optimization,
engine optimization. Yeah.
search engine optimization, right? Or otherwise known as SEO,
Yeah.
is one of those things where like when you first hear it, you're like, wait, what? And then you're like, oh, I could be like top of Google. Oh wait, like I could do that just making some simple changes. Like how do I do? And like you
Yeah.
see the value in learning that skill.
Yep.
And then what's crazy is how many people like will pay for that and they'll pay out the freaking nose for it.
Hmm.
So like all of a sudden, like if you can train yourself to learn it, you can save yourself a ton of money. And it's almost like when you like I don't know when I own my home, I don't own a home now, but like when I own my home, like it was one of those things where like I would redo a bathroom and
Yeah.
I hated the actual redoing the bathroom, but I
Yeah.
loved the idea that I'm like, oh, I spent like $1,000 to redo this bathroom versus the 20,000. Like I paid
Yep.
myself that money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's kind of the same thing with SEO. It's like I'm on the first page of Google and I didn't have to pay $10,000 to get there. You know what I mean? And then of
Yeah.
course, as we leveled up and more, we did pay people to do this because they would do it better than we would.
Yeah.
But you see kind of that like leveling up and that learning.
Well, and I think that's the other part of that too, is that you put in all that effort, you learn, you know things. I always kind of somebody when I was younger told me you always want to keep learning because you never know when that little stupid fact is going to be the difference between somebody paying you money or not, right? Oh, he knew something about Pablo Picasso's Blue Period. Cool. Great. Well, that one client loves you for it, so they do it. And I think the lifelong learning is a big part of that passion. And you trial by fire when you're an entrepreneur, man. Like you
Yeah.
better learn and you better be good at self-reflecting. And I think that those are all things that I would get on performance reviews. He's good at self-reflection. He's doing his CEUs and all that. But it always kind of felt hollow because honestly, I would do all that work and it's like, hey, 4 out of 5, here's your 2%. Whereas
Yeah.
now it's like, oh, dude, I learned about SEO and now I'm ranking on Google and I got 4 calls this week. And that means I can get this and this and this and this, and my family can go on vacation and all that. So it feels now more that I'm doing something to make me and my family, and I'm getting the benefits of it versus you're really just hoping for that pizza party and a high five when it comes to someone else's business, right? And not to, there's very passionate people out there who aren't entrepreneurs and owners, but at least for me, that was a big thing.
Yeah, I think the you pushed on something that we didn't even say we were talking about, but I like this is like the skills, like what skills. That's a good separate podcast we can put on. Like what skills should you learn to level yourself up as a
Yeah,
PT or healthcare professional? I love that. And so
yeah,
when you think about skill sets and what you have to learn as an entrepreneur, you wear every single hat, right? As a business owner, particularly when you're starting out like where you are, you're wearing the website hat, you're wearing the
yep,
you're wearing front desk hat, you're wearing the lead nurture hat that you got to like go get the clients, you're wearing the physical
yep,
therapy hat, right? You're winning,
yep,
any every single thing, you're wearing all the hats. And so you get to learn the business inside and out from the get-go. That's I think a huge advantage for starting a business. One big one that people have asked me about is like taxes, and I think one of
yeah,
the reasons that I'm decent at like understanding taxes is because the first few years to honestly to save money, but then it
yeah,
ended up giving me a skill was I did my own taxes. So I understood
mm,
like, oh, I could write these things off, or here's what this looks like, or here's what I got to pay attention to, right? So then you also realize like this is all stupid. I don't need to pay attention to any of this stuff. Like this is a waste of time. So all of a sudden you learn that stuff. So to learn certain skills, I'll tell you the skill that I have learned that has like changed my life and trajectory in the last year has been the ability to sell. A good book for people to read is by Jordan Belfer. So everybody knows Jordan Belfer, right? The Wolf of Wall
Wolf of
Street.
Wall Street, yeah,
Yeah, The Way of the Wolf, a great book, right? Now,
yeah.
again, in The Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not saying to do what he did in that, and he would be the first to tell you that.
He
But
was a
he then
wholesome
felt
gentleman,
exactly, but he
a
developed,
nice boy.
yeah, he develops and talks about in The Way of the Wolf the straight line method and how they
Yeah,
talk about sales. And that was, again, I think a lot of people, particularly in healthcare, we were how often were we drilled in our head, Owen, about like doing sales is like grimy and like, oh, like
mm,
you just got to help everybody for free. And, well, it's like, no, like sales can do it in a way where like you can just be logical and talk about the
yeah,
emotional problems. And if somebody's got an issue, they come to you and you can fix their problems. And
yeah,
and again, it's just how to draw that out. So that's a great book.
yeah.
And then obviously learning how to sell more and more and being comfortable with it has been a really big game changer for me.
You
So
know,
that's
it's
been a fun
really
skill to learn.
Well, it's really cool to listen to because I'm thinking back to our days back in college, right? And we would be this would be the level of kind of passion that Brian would bring out for like the Achilles tendon, right?
Yeah.
Or or back pain or something like that. And then to kind of see it morph now to, your role as a business leader to be able to kind of say like, oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's where I think that work-life balance really is a thing, is that you're taking your passion, but you're changing it. And like you said, in different seasons of life, right? Like where am I aiming this passion cannon?
Yeah,
You
man.
know? And being able to say, okay, look at this cool thing I read. Look at all this stuff. Like, I never would have heard that out of you 15 years ago when we were in school. It was always about like, look at this tendon, look at this, this is a cool exercise that somebody's doing. It's just cool to see it morph, right? And I think that that's passionate people are passionate. It's just about different things as they grow, right? And I think for when we're talking about work-life balance, find your passion. And I know it's very cliche to say it, but don't think that it's like something hiding under a rock or whatever. Like you just have to attack something, right? And learn something and do it and learn by doing.
Yeah, you said something earlier, and I can't remember whether it was on the podcast or something we were just talking beforehand, but like I think that a lot of people get into business for themselves thinking, hey, I'm gonna make more money, right?
Mm,
And there's no doubt about it, by the way, like right now, even like 6, 7 years in the business, I could go make more money doing other stuff, right? Just people paying
yep.
that. But doing what I'm doing in physical therapy, and obviously, like it's got to pay off at the end. Like that's the
Mm,
goal. But the passionate aspect of like where we're headed and what we're doing and how I'm doing it is what's most exciting and fun and fulfilling, and
yeah.
motivates me every day. Right, to like get up and practice, and like we were talking about earlier. I did a speech this morning, like a 5-minute keynote for a bunch of business leaders who give the civis fitness business, and I
Mm,
was up at 9 o'clock last night practicing that thing.
mm,
And so it's like, I would have never done that if I was a staff PT working for somebody
No.
else. Like, and I don't even mean it in like, a physical therapist said this to me. We were visiting, like doing the rare doctor's visit that we do, right? And we're
Hmm.
walking in, and she said to me, she was like, I could work at this like hospital physician-owned practice, but she's like, and I would do it because I know that I have a salary that I could go to. But she's like,
Hmm.
that would not make me passionate. Like, that's not what
Yeah.
I would want to do, right? I want to go treat active adults, athletes, that kind of thing. And like, so those
Hmm.
types of physical therapists we're looking for. And the
Yeah.
reality of it is people get into business thinking they'll make more money,
Yeah.
like almost like trying to strike this passion within them. And I
Yeah.
can tell you, I can think of several people that I know that were like, I'm going to start my own business, got maybe 4 months into it, and then I took another job somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I think what happened was they found all this other stuff that you and I are talking about. They were like, this is awesome, this is fun, this is passionate. And they're like, screw it, this sucks, I don't want to do it. And that's cool
Well,
too.
well, but how many phone calls did you take from me after I got, I don't know, something happened at work, right? And I was like, oh God, I can't, you know, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, right? And
Yeah.
the number one thing I'd always tell you is I have a mortgage and two kids. I can't take that financial hit. And it
Yeah.
eventually got to a point where I was just so miserable that I decided if the psychological benefit to my family is way more than what financially will be a hit. Um, but honestly, with PRN work, I've been making, I think I made more money last year than I made ever, right?
Yeah.
And it's because you can kind of piece together things. I was, really fortunate with some of the clients and all that I got right off the bat. But I mean, it's not because I'm a miraculous PTs. I was just lucky, right? So I think that upfront fear is a big thing,
Yeah.
right? For a lot of, especially PTs, right? We like consistency. Everything should be ducks in a row. That kind of jump is scary, but I'm here to tell you it's not as terrible if you're passionate about what you do.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things about thinking about how, I've heard Alex Hormozy say this before. You pay for a skill in one of two ways, either in time or in money. Right.
Okay.
So I think what happens in the beginning that you can save yourself money is you pay with your time. Like
Hmm.
we were talking about SEO. Let me learn how to do this SEO thing. For me, a big one that I thought was great was let me learn how to do Facebook marketing. Right. Let me learn
Yeah.
how to do that paid advertising. We talked about that on the podcast. Right. And so it is actually cool now that we do outsource that and I actually pay someone quite a bit of money to do it. It
Yeah.
is still a great skill that I can go back and check some things because I know where to look. I know
Hmm.
where to
Yeah.
go. I know where to do that. I'm not helpless in that way. I'm also not
Yeah.
held hostage by that,
Yeah.
right? So there's aspects of that are really great skills to learn. And I think, if you monopolize your time, the one thing about healthcare that we've talked about a little bit in the past has been you are trading time for money. So if you're not learning skills on how to get your time back, there will be a finite amount of money that you can make.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I've just found in I have found with friends of mine who are in other parts of healthcare and whatnot, even if you're making, a ton of money in your business, there's a certain threshold where you get capped out and you get frustrated by the lack thereof growth. And what
Yeah.
happens is you just end up working more hours. And I've heard this guy Paul Goff who does a really good job with what he does, and he has a lot of mentorship stuff out there as well. And he was one of the original guys that I started talking with when I started my business. And he talked about how he's like, I just realized at one point I was the king of the rats. Like, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I've become a business owner. I left the rat race, but now I've just gone back into the rat race, and now I'm the king of the rats, right? Like I'm making more money. So that's what happens. Like I'm making
You are
more money,
Splinter.
but I'm still doing the same thing, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
there's an aspect of like how to develop more and more skills, and I think that's something where, people can get to a point where they're like, I want to go do something completely different.
Yeah. 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 And I've actually, not to be too nice to you because that would be weird for me, but I kind of joke that you started what I want to start, but just early, right?
Yeah,
So you got married like 5 years before me. You had kids like 5 years before me. You opened a business 8, 9, whatever years before me. Um, so, now your kids are a little bit older. Mine are 3 and 5. Yours are older than that. Forgive me, I don't know exactly what they are, but
mm,
um, that's something that I think is another thing. And not everyone listening to this podcast has kids, but some of them do, or they're thinking about maybe doing it. So, like, what are some things that you did to kind of, I don't know, juggle that, right? Like, you
yeah.
still have kids who are waiting for you at 5 o'clock when the door opens. How do you with the work life balance, like, how'd you do it? And I mean, I can always share stuff too, but I'm just interested because you're farther down the road.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different answers to that, right?
Yeah.
One is, and it's embracing the synergy that is work-life balance, right? Understanding that they're not two separate roads, that they go together. And
Okay.
so as a father and also a business owner, my kids will come to me with work on a Saturday or a Sunday. We'll go and we'll run around the gym, which I find is super cool.
Yeah.
We were talking about, I had a good Instagram reel the other day about, this lemonade stand where my wife and I explained to my daughter who wanted to do a lemonade stand, like, let's talk about the process of like starting a business and the original hustle, right? Like
Hmm.
the lemonade stand, like, where you're going
Yeah.
to get the money to get the cups. Okay, I'll lend you money. Here's the bank. Here's how I get the money. I'm going to take this, and what I'm going to do is, we're going to go to the grocery store. Then we're going to buy the stuff. Then we're going to go. Then we're going to go, home, and then we're going to make this. Then we're going to make the lemonade, and then we're going to set up the stand outside. Hey, what about, like, let's talk landlord relationship. How does that work, right? Talk with my father, who's where we were. Let's
Yeah.
get this right. Let's market the stuff, right? How do we get the word out about the lemonade? And then once when you make the money, how do you divvy up the money?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? And how
So
that
you're
yeah.
so you're building in these life lessons to stuff that you kind of have to do.
Yeah, yeah. Another story that's really cool, and I'm going to be careful because, again, we always don't know who's listening to these podcasts. But I'll tell you another story. There's an aspect of my kids being proud of what I'm doing because I'm passionate about what I'm doing. So people, I was listening to a thing about Eric Thomas earlier. He was talking this earlier, and I thought this was super interesting. He was like, what we do will impact our children more than we believe it will. Whether it's in
Yeah.
our actions, whether it's in how we work, how we come home, how we teach them. So if I'm not passionate about it, I'm doing in work, that's going to rub off on them. And so
Mhm.
there's an aspect of, like, my daughter's really intrigued about entrepreneurship because she's really like, mom and dad are really happy about being like the boss. And not,
Mhm.
I don't like throwing that word around, especially around, like, we have the best people that work for us. Like, they're just awesome, awesome people.
Yeah.
So I never try and be like, I'm the boss. I hate that so much.
Yeah. It's kind of weird.
It is. It's more like,
Yeah.
it's like I have the privilege of having these people follow me as I'm driving the bus, right? Like,
Yeah.
need that, but,
Yeah.
like, that's the respect I try and give in that regard.
Yeah. Well,
That
especially most of them are professionals. They
Yeah,
hold their PT degree or their trainer certificate or something. So yeah.
yeah, they're putting their trust in me to make sure I'm making the right decisions, right? There's a lot of accountability I take on that.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like, my daughter sees, like, that responsibility and is like, okay, like, I want to be like that. If I'm going to do that, I have to keep a certain standard. And I think when it comes to juggling kids, what is very nice about, entrepreneurship is the flexibility, right? While I
Mm.
do work a ton of hours, there's times where I can change what I need to do to accommodate, to drive my kids somewhere or take them somewhere, right? Again, I'm definitely working more hours, but it's a way that
Yeah.
we can do that. So I think that's the other side of that juggle. And then just you nailed it about the financial side. It's like adjusting kind of the balance you need to have, because if you're adjusting that accordingly,
Hmm.
and investing in the right ways, then you're also really figuring out what matters the most and getting your priorities right.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where, if I'm going to take my kids to go do something, we're going to go do it together with some form of intention and teaching them
Yeah.
that intention.
Well, and I'm at this like kind of interesting crossroads now that I've been in it probably what 5, 6 months, right? And getting some clients, getting a little bit more viable a business, not 100% full time on my business, but working up to that, right?
Mm.
And I kind of have this choice. Do I want to be a company of one where I just raise my rates, keep the same amount of patients, and that eventually will cap out, like you said, there'll be a certain amount, but then I have the lovely ability to work from 10 to 3 and I can pick my kids up every day and
Yeah.
there's no problem with that. Or do I want to try and grow and scale, right? Do I want to kind of build and buy a location and hire people and all that? And I think it's just really great that I have the choice,
Yeah.
right? I just love the fact that it could very much come down to like the girls being like, oh, like we're totally cool, like going to basketball practice, mom's got us, and I'm just like, huh, I guess I'll scale this thing, you know.
Yeah. I think
Or I could be like, you know what? I really like ballet recital. I'm going to go to that more. Let's be a
yeah.
company of one.
Yeah. I think you nailed it on the, like, what's the difference as I've gone along, right?
Yeah,
I think when it comes to, one thing that it's easy to get in your head about this stuff is, like, particularly, like, this is where social media can be brutal, is you
mm,
see the young 23, 25, 28-year-old person who's a multimillionaire, and you
yeah,
can be like, why not me? right?
Yeah.
And the reality is like, again, I was hearing ET talk about this. He was like, champion, don't be jealous and be like, why do they
Yeah.
have that? Just understand, like, what do I have to learn to get there? They
Yeah.
can do that. So that means I
Hmm.
can do that. So how do I have
Yeah.
to learn to do that with
Yeah.
they? And I think that to me was a big, or again, I'm just on a different timetable and that's totally fine. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, I was the KFC Colonel Sandler. She didn't start that bad boy till he was like in his 60s. Look at that thing now,
Yeah.
it's a monster, right? So like, it doesn't matter. It's just like
Yeah.
are you passionate about it? Are you headed in a direction that you're pumped about? Are you setting the groundwork that you want to set? And again, do you want to be a party of one? Do you want to be a business that scales? Like it's the world's your oyster, man. You just got to figure out the skills and how to do it.
And I think that's a really good thought to end on when we're talking about work-life balance is the old misnomer of, you're either with your family or you're at work is the bridge to those two things is passion. If you're passionate about what you do, if it's something that you really can help, grow everybody's flowers with your water, whatever it is, right? You can really strike a good work-life balance because you're passionate about something and it won't feel like work.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I totally agree. It makes it very worthwhile and exciting to grow and expand and put time in all the time, right? And
Yeah.
take the money that otherwise you'd be paying yourself and put it back into the business to keep growing it, right? Like I would have learned this, or I want to do that. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, invest in yourself and you'll feel a lot better.
For sure. For sure.
All right. So put a like, comment, whatever you want. We'd love to talk to you about this stuff. I'm going through it right now, the early entrepreneurship. Brian's been doing it for a while. Really kind of digging into this work-life balance stuff. Any comments you have, if you think we're idiots or you think we're geniuses, put it in the comments. I got nothing left, Brian. What do you got, man?
No, man,
Anything you
that's
want to leave
good.
them
I love
with?
it. I love it. Definitely put stuff in the comments for us if there's something in particular you want us to talk about. We'll do it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, we can't just talk to ourselves now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, man. See
Cool,
ya.
man. See ya.